Welcome back to Operator Syndrome, episode 31. Last time we were talking about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, really was the topic, but also the transition, uh, Steve, for you from the training department into another. Do you all say line platoon? How do you all? What's the
Yeah.
how would you all describe like a see we would say like a line platoon, line company. It's a very army thing. What about for the SEALs? How
No,
would you describe
just
that?
platoon.
Platoon.
A fresh platoon. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
Yeah.
in
I
the
mean,
regular SEAL teams, that's the operational unit. At the other unit, at, at the at Dev Group,
mhm.
they refer to them as troops or in
Okay.
squadrons. So it's a little different organization. The structure is a little different numbers wise. So
Yeah. In the army, everyone's obsessed with being on the line, right?
a
Very like
line.
like trench warfare, World War
Oh,
II, right? The forward line of event. Are you on the line, or are you like someone who's in the rear?
I was
So,
thinking Johnny Cash. I'll walk the line.
yeah, you walk the
But
line.
hey,
Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Hmm.
talk. So, your mentor, someone that you really looked up to, was a platoon chief. We talked a little bit about
Yeah.
the commander, your platoon commander.
Hmm.
Some issues there got swapped out at the end. You all deploy to the Philippines. What's that like?
Yeah, that it was like I say, it was a good platoon. A lot of hard chargers. Um, uh, uh, Probably, arguably, the best chief I've ever worked with, Chief Mike Bailey, who I will be headed out there. I'm giving a teaser out there. I'm flying to Seattle in October to hang with him, and I'm hoping to at least get some stories going, if not to have him on the podcast. He's not shy, but he doesn't he likes to defer attention to himself. He's not one of these braggadocious people. It goes on and on. But anyway, we'll see. So yeah, exceptional amount of knowledge he had, and most of that was the traditional Vietnam era ambush, gu guerrilla warfare type tactics that made us kind of the unit that we've fallen. I mean, we've grown to become. So yeah, he was great and hilarious. He could crack everybody up. He has the most sarcastic sense of humor. So everything, I mean, even on the smallest level, going to the chow hall, he'll have you laughing. He's just that kind of guy.
Hmm.
Uh, we were in the Philippines, just for example. We were going through the chow hall line, and the Philippine chow halls are run by and large by Filipinos. Some of them are in the Navy, by marriage or whatever. Um, and so there's not 100% grasp of the English language, and we were getting rolls, just like bread rolls,
Hmm.
on our tray, and there was a sign that said, "Please use tongue rather than tongs,"
Hmm.
And he's like, "Hey, make sure you use the tongue, okay?" I mean, just little silly stuff like that, but a lot of fun to be with, but really smart. What To sum it up in a broad way, not sum it up, but it just kind of casts the context. We were headed out for a normal, what's called a West Pac in the Navy. We call it a West Pac deployment, Western Pacific. Um, and so we're deploying to somewhere in Southeast Asia. Back in the day, it was Subic Bay Naval Base in the Philippines. We have since pulled our bases out of the Philippines. We don't have any military presence there now, unless they were to request our help. Well, actually, there are some operations going on in the Philippines, but it's not. We don't have a big base like we used to, as far as I know. But I know there's stuff going on there because of Muslim insurgency, and
Right.
it's big in Southeast Asia. I mean, Indonesia. A lot of people don't know this, but Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, over 200 million Muslims. I mean, bigger than anything in the Middle East.
Yeah, and they had branches. I don't know if they have, but there were branches of Al Qaeda
Hmm.
and ISIS even.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And even in Malaysia, some of the ISIS, I just through the grapevine, some of the ISIS big dogs that we were seriously looking for, high value targets, you'd call them, had fled to that area of the world to try to hide from us. So yeah, I mean, it you wouldn't think, you don't necessarily think Southeast Asia Muslim, you would think something like Buddhist or Shinto or one of these
Sure.
other religions, but it's growing in that area. Even in China, there's a Muslim presence. So anyhow, so we headed over, and we were leaving. Our Westpac is a 6-month deployment, and I was trying to rack my brain. I'm pretty sure we left in June of 92. No, yeah, June of 92. And we came back in November of that same year.
Mhm.
But that's during the monsoon season, which is heavy rains. I mean, it's, if you've seen movies about the jungles of Southeast Asia and the rains that come, it's just otherworldly. I mean, it's like buckets coming down on top of you at once, and then it'll dry up and it'll be sunshiny. I mean, I think they had a couple scenes like that in Forrest Gump and a couple in Platoon, where it's
Right.
just miserable, man. You cannot even see in front of you your face. It's raining so hard. Nothing like I've seen back in the States. I guess they probably have some good ones down in Florida from time to time, but we're talking equatorial monsoons. So that was significant because when we left, right as we were leaving, days before we left, one of the largest disasters in Philippine history was the eruption of Mount Pinatubo on the main island of Luzon, which is where Philippines are a big archipelago of islands. If in case you don't know, our listeners might not know, Luzon's a big one, and that's where Manila is and Subic Bay and all that. And anyway, it was something else. It had leveled Clark Air Base. I mean, flattened it. In fact, they just pulled out of the base. It wasn't worth rebuilding. I mean, and then there was a bunch of damage on the Subic Bay Naval Base, but not as bad. It was structures were still standing. And the crazy thing that I did not know until we got there is that what causes a lot of the damage in a volcano is the ash that settles on structures, especially if it's a flat roof.
Mhm.
And I always would think like grilling out or having a campfire, ash is rather light and fluffy. It's not heavy.
Mhm.
This stuff is like sand. All right. It's more
Interesting.
like sand than what you would think of as like a charcoal ash or something. It's heavy. I mean, it's like, scooping sand like you're filling sandbags or something. So, and it's incredible that that much material could come out of the ground. I mean, there was 6 inches to a foot of this sand, literally, like it weighed as much as sand on the roofs of buildings. I mean, killed a bunch of people. Thousands died. Um,
Does it accumulate? I mean, even if it was over a matter of hours, that's very fast. But
yeah.
was it hours, days that it would get to that
Oh, I think it
amount?
was hours. Yeah,
Hours, okay.
it was hours, and you had like massive weight on all this stuff. Um, Now, so there was all of that that to deal with because we were told. I think we flew from San Diego to Hawaii, Hawaii to Guam, Guam to Subic, 3 legs on these big jets. And I believe we were told in Guam, get ready to be doing a lot of cleanup work on the base mostly. We were mostly on the Subic Bay Naval Base, cleaning up. But one of the problems from the monsoon rains is all of this ash, which think sand, had filled these areas that normally had good drainage, and so they were getting all kinds of flooding. I mean, just insane amount of flooding.
Mhm.
I mean, they get flooding bad normally in a monsoon season, but we're talking people drowning left and right in the floods, and vehicles not being able to get through, roads, bridges washed out, all this craziness that, it just compounded, one thing after another. So we did a lot of work. And now the second half of our platoon, after about 3 months, we had pretty much everything was cleaned up with use of, heavy equipment and us digging, um, we, we called it the mop and broom deployment because we were just doing so much work on the base and even in our own platoon spaces and at the Naval Special Warfare Unit, one of our other sayings. I was looking at my plaque the other day from we had plaques made up from our deployments, and it was just kind of the names of the guys and something funny and a photo or something like that. And it said somebody, I don't know who did this. I don't know, but they came up with the motto for this deployment was ask not what your unit can do for you, ask what you can do for your unit. From playing off Kennedy's ask not what
Right.
your country can do for you. So it was just we had a lot of fun, honestly. So, but one of the big things that happened because of the flooding was there were Marines. Everybody was doing all this. I guess you'd call it humanitarian slash relief work or cleanup. I don't know what you'd call it really. It was just, well, we were trying to help out in any way we could.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marines had gone out to this one area to, of all things, plant mahogany trees. I don't ask me. Some admiral probably got a medal for it or something, but it was like the Filipinos had been really not doing best practices to their old growth mahogany forest, and it was washing out hillsides, and I mean it was like needing to be planted back. And this was on part of the base. This was on part of Subic Bay Naval Base. So in somebody's great wisdom, they sent a bunch of Marines to just plant trees. I can't remember if it was on a weekend or what, but they were doing this. And but they were having to cross a series of streams to borderline rivers to get to the places where they wanted them to go. And so they asked us to go out there and serve kind of as lifeguards in case if these rivers came up quick.
Sure.
It was serious. So we were like, sure. I mean, why not? Better than shoveling sand or ash.
Right.
So yeah, we strung up on this one pretty significant river. We got across it and secured like what would be like a rappel line. And so myself and two others, we had harnesses on. I mean, we had like climbing harnesses, and we just carabinered in with life jackets to keep our heads buoyant, and just pulled our way out there. And sure enough, man, the sky gets black in about 10 seconds. And we're like, the thing about monsoon rains is that usually here where I live in Kentucky in the Midwest, you see them coming for a while. There's the clouds, it's getting dark. Okay. And some of them do move in pretty fast, but this is almost like flipping a switch. And it was like 1 minute it's beautiful blue Filipino sky, and then you turn over here and it's just blackness moving in. And here you go. So this river road, we we saw it rise within minutes. I mean, by a foot or so or more. And here come these flailing Marines like down the river,
No kidding.
coming right at us. And we had fins on so we could kind of move and pull along the rope, and we just horse collar hook them. And they were almost more than we could get to. We just hook them and say, grab on for dear life on this line, and then hook another one. And we were all trying to like fish these guys. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It was just weird, but it was, we saved probably half dozen guys from God knows what. I wouldn't want to swim in it. Not we were strong swimmers, so pretty weird. That's probably the weirdest thing I've ever done in serving as a SEAL. I mean, it's not weird in the sense that it was a good thing to do to help these guys, but it was, who would have ever thought of that? So
I mean, how many would you estimate ended up in the water?
I'd say a dozen or more. That thing came up. They were crossing sort of a bridge like thing, and the water just came so fast, it just washed them off of this thing. And some of them clung to it. Some of them got washed off. Some of them managed somehow to grab something on the shore and get to shore. So it's just an estimate, but at least
that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of guys.
A dozen people is a lot. I mean, did you get all? Were they all accounted for at the end of this? Okay,
we didn't lose anybody.
Okay.
No, we got them all to safety. But boy, it was exciting there for a few minutes. So yeah, it's bizarre. I mean,
yeah, that's really strange. You would think that, okay, someone had the foresight to say, hey, the SEALs,
yeah,
the SEALs aren't doing anything. Let's get them in their flippers and their life jackets and have them stand by. And then it actually goes down. But you'd think that an equal amount of caution would have been made
To right.
on the Marine side to be like, hey, this is like a sketchy area, so let's, I don't know.
Not
I'm
cross
not
in
I'm
the
not
first
Monday
place.
morning quarterbacking. I'm
Yeah,
just
right.
saying just very interesting. It's like you said, it's an odd situation.
It was an odd situation, or maybe it was the case that, oh, we got all these SEALs down here as lifeguards, let's go for it. Throw caution to the
Could
wind.
be, yeah,
You never know how these things play out, but yeah,
yeah,
I don't know on the Marine end what the thinking was. I did think that was a little risky to be sending guys across a flooding. But honestly, if you don't have a healthy respect for the water, if you've never had any, deer in the headlights moments of, whoa, this water is powerful. I mean, look at how many people try to cross these crazy floods, here in the States, and somebody's just
yeah,
like, oh, I can make it. Yeah, maybe. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. They say don't cross any like standing body
mm,
of water, or definitely no moving body of water.
moving.
I've definitely I've definitely driven through some things I shouldn't have driven through before.
Yeah.
But when I'm trying to picture this creek turned river instantaneously, what I always think back to. You ever seen the movie Dante's Peak with
No.
Pierce Brosnan? Oh, you got to check that out, especially if you've seen like real volcano aftermath. You
Yeah.
need to see Dante's Peak. Well, anyways, I think we've all seen like video of you know, swollen rivers. I'm thinking especially like post volcanic swollen rivers. Like
Yeah.
it's like heavy.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it's like a slurry. It's like a slushy of dirt and like
Right.
branches and cars and things like that. So, I mean that maybe that was before, but this river as it's filling up, it's just straight up water, more or
Yeah.
less. It doesn't have all I mean,
Yeah.
water would be enough to take care of you, but
Yeah.
okay,
This was enough later to where it was just water. It wasn't mixed with all that what looks like a milkshake,
yeah,
talking about. But we did fly. A helicopter took us up. I don't know what we were doing. We were doing some training in a helo. It was a 60, and he said, You want to see the crater on this sucker?" And we were not far from it. We were like, "Yeah, man." He goes, "Check this out." And he flew over it, and I've never seen anything like it. It looked like the moon. I mean, the Philippines everywhere over there is just the most lush, gorgeous, thick jungle green you've ever seen in your life. It's like Vietnam. It's like all those areas over there. It looked like it looked like there had been Agent Orange or a napalm strike. It was like
mhm,
nothing standing. It was all gray. It looked like it had been carpet bombed. Like all you saw were these stalks of trees, no limbs. All of that was smashed to the ground. It was freaky looking because I've been over there before, and just knowing triple canopy jungle and then flying over this, it just looked like, whoa, it looked like a bomb had gone off and just flattened everything. But
my guess is that your original mission, although that happened before you all deployed, but my guess is your original mission was going to be that foreign internal defense part, working with the
mhm,
Filipino SEALs or whoever from there. And my guess is when you showed up, those folks you would have been training with, which would have been the main component of your deployment, they were busy cleaning up their country, which
yeah,
is why you all were kind of left to, and then maybe like a all hands on deck, to use some
yeah,
Navy speak,
yeah.
to help
Oh,
with the
on
cleanup,
that.
right? Were you I mean, it sounds like you all kept busy. What
Yeah,
was the feeling though in terms of like, okay, yeah, this is not a tactical deployment at all? Or did you were you by the end of it, were you all able to kickstart
yeah,
some tactical esque
yeah,
thing?
yeah. Exactly. After about 2 months, 3 months, we started back into our regular training cycle, and we did FID. We went out to the same place where we had at my first platoon, where the we were training the Filipino SEALs, and the coup d'état happened.
Hmm.
But we went right back out there because that's our it's part of Subic Bay Naval Base, but it's a gunnery range, it's a demo range. You can do a lot of stuff out there. And we were just teaching them basic stuff like basic fire and movement, like stuff you'd learn in buds or something.
Hmm.
Letting them shoot the Huya guns, and have some fun because their military is so poor economically speaking that, I mean, they can't even afford. They've never seen a live AT-4 rocket. I mean, for civilian, if you don't know, an AT-4 rocket, an anti-tank shoulder-fired rocket, one of those baby, it's a disposable piece of weaponry. You shoot it, it's no good. You need another one. and it's designed to do that. But one of those cost, well, back then they cost over $8,000 a pop. Okay, so we must have shot. I mean, just our platoon alone, we must have shot 30 of those things or more. 30 times eight. I mean, that's, you're getting into some serious cabbage after a while. If you think about all the SEAL teams and all the platoons training, and that's one thing I learned about a lot of the developing country militaries. They just don't have near the resources we have. Even bullets, they a lot of times couldn't even shoot their M16s, and so it was this happened both times. We were letting them shoot. We'd give them ammo, and we'd have ranges set up, and they could shoot, and they were just like, well, this is the first time I fired my gun ever, except for qualifying, you know. We were like, well, good on you, I mean, enjoy. It's on the house. And after we would leave the range, I mean, we had to have the range secured for safety reasons. After we would leave the range, these Filipino children would go scampering like rabbits to collect the brass
Mm-hmm.
because it's worth a lot to them. I mean, they would, and we would trade. Hey, this is a funny thing. We would, I don't know if well, we're not in the Philippines anymore, but when we were at Green Beach, we would have, the Philippines is kind of a matriarchal society in some ways. The women really have sort of more influence in some ways than the men. And it's kind of cool in some ways. It's just different. So we would always send somebody in the platoon, usually the chief or somebody who's pretty experienced, to talk with the mama-san, what we called her, the village, because there were villages nearby. And they would cook us really yummy Filipino food, like lumpia, pancit, all this stuff that I still like. And we would trade for like all of the brass from the range. And so she would organize a bunch of kids to go out and get all these brasses, after they spent brasses after we'd shot them. And they would collect them, and I clearly more than paid for the food because they were more than happy to get them. So it, stuff like that. But yeah, we were out there. Yeah, we train them. We could only do so much. I mean, they only had so much training and strength and endurance and all that, which no fault of their own. It's just a different kind of deal. But we had one day where oh man, this is where Mike Bailey's wisdom comes in. We had a truck, we called it in the Navy, we called it DRMO. It was where all the salvage, it was just a big like junkyard of all the broken down trucks and broken down trailers and whatever. And so we could usually find a big truck, deuce and a half, or in this case it was a panel truck, some sort of panel truck for something.
Okay.
And we hauled it out there. We had the Seabees haul it out there for us, and because we're going to blow it, and we wanted to show these guys how to do shape charges and blow up stuff. So I don't know who did the shape charge on this, but they put way too much C4 on this thing. And they didn't need, well, they were just going to destroy it. Well, one thing leads to another, and they put a ton of it on there. And Mike, and he's an EOD guy. He went to explosive ordnance disposal school on top of being a SEAL. So he really knows explosives well. And he really has a healthy respect for explosives. And he said, guys, how much C4 did you put on that thing? And these guys were just like, 3 haversacks. That's like, well, that's 60 pounds of C4. Just a lot if it all goes off at once. And Mike's like, what are your charge calculations for the distance we should be? Because we're looking at it. It's like right over there. And they're like, I don't know, a couple hundred yards or something. He's like, we need more distance than that. And they're like, well, we already set the time. Yeah, I don't know. He had come into it late, and it's going off. And he's like, I'll see you later. He gets in a truck, and I jumped in with him. He goes, he took off. And these guys are like, what's the big deal, Chief? You're being all snooty about this or something. And he's like, I've seen too many things go sideways. That thing goes off. And I mean, a side of the truck, a whole side of the panel truck was spinning right toward the base camp where everybody was. like a frisbee. It went whoosh, whoosh. And I mean, it was high enough to where it cleared everybody. It went out into the beach, into the ocean, and you just see this water just go up like a geyser. And all the guys are going, whoa. I mean, if that thing had been 20 feet lower, it cut everybody in half. I mean, and Mike, he was down the beach. He goes, we could see it because he got far enough away where he turned the truck and we could watch. But we were about a half a mile at that point. And he goes, see what I mean? He just turned to me and goes, see what I mean? And we had a big laugh about it. But I'll tell you this, after that, everybody took bunkers a little more serious and
Yeah, I bet.
charge calculations.
That's the best. See, Chief knows. That's the
Yeah.
best way. You're not going to learn the lesson just
No.
telling you. They're going to have to experience it for yourself.
No.
Yeah, explosives always seem like the one area where everything else, rockets,
Mhm.
machine guns, rifles, pistols, whatever, like everyone, like the safety around it, it's very clear cut. It's like, don't point, the bang bang end towards anyone you don't want
Yeah.
to hurt, right? And, know the status of it. It's
In toward enemy.
exactly. It's pretty simple. But when it got to building charges and being on the range and having a lot of extra time, that's where things get interesting. I remember we were at one
Oh.
range and we had like I think we were blowing doors. That's what we were doing out there that day. It might have been some kind of larger FTX, but they'd been using that same range for blowing a bunch of doors. So there's like a stack of doors and plywood, and somebody wanted to, I don't know how it came up, but they decided that, and it was just stacked on top of each other like layers. So, think of like a flaky biscuit, but it's wood.
Yeah.
And then they were like, someone just shoved some explosives kind of towards the middle of it. And then how much was in there, don't know.
Yeah.
But like, if I think back now, I'm like, okay, so we've got this loose fitting stuff, shards of wood, like same thing, like things all over the place. It was pretty wild. And I remember another time, I think we were overseas and they were doing like a class, and they were practicing shape charges. So they were having dudes make like
Mm.
field
Oh,
expedient shape charges using like dip cans and like
yeah.
soda cans, whatever.
Yeah.
That was better controlled, more interesting. But again, I always just found like, and especially an area that I wasn't like an expert in. So I was always like, man, I feel like we don't do this the same way we do other things. Like we're
Yeah.
a
Right.
lot more cavalier with the explosives than I feel comfortable with.
And
So,
that's the last thing you want to be cavalier with, really. There's another funny story about explosives on that trip. I just remembered this one. We had a boat. We had a landing craft, again, from DRMO, I think was the name of it. And we wanted to blow it up, and we were training the Filipino SEALs. Now we didn't let they could dive with us, but we were doing all the setting off explosives. So guess who? Because I had a lot of demo exposure with breaching. I dealt with it a lot in assaults. So Lieutenant Colin Green, said, okay, you and Pete, one of the guys in the platoon, he was an ordnance guy. He goes, you guys go out and do the calculations. We're going to blow this boat, and I want it to sink. And we're like, okay, no problem. It was huge. It was about the size of my house or bigger. So it was a formidable, all steel landing craft. I don't know the sizes of them all, but it was pretty big. And so we're doing the charge calculations, which we were really going by the book. Okay, we need this many pounds for this much area. We're studying the structure of the ship so we could see if we could break the spine like we're supposed to and all this. Well, lo and behold, word gets out that SEALs are going to blow up a ship. And in the chain of command, like other Navy players on the base who are high ranking got wind of this. So that's going to be cool to watch. You don't get to see that every day. So Colin calls us in and he goes, okay, now we've got the special boat unit wants to come out. And after the explosions go off, they want to race in and shoot it with their 50 cals because they don't get to shoot live things sinking in water like that. And we're like, okay, fine with us. We're going to be out of there. And then we went back to our charge calculations, all this. Okay, long story. So finally, Colin Green calls us into his office again. And he says, okay, now we've got the base admiral coming to watch this. We're like, it's turning into a circus, man, quick. And he said, promise me that thing's going to sink. I don't want any screw ups on this. And we're like, yes, sir. We left and went out, and I looked at Pete, and he looks at me, and he goes, let's go through those charge calculations one more time, because he doesn't want to screw up. Obviously, he's got a lot of pressure on him now. And so we calculated, and we go, yeah, that should do it. And then Pete just looks at me, because I had a little more demo experience than Pete did. He goes, "You sure this is going to work?" And I go, "You know what? The lieutenant wants it sunk. Let's double it."
Yeah.
Why not? Right? We
That
double.
yeah, that's
He's like,
that's what I was thinking in my head.
yeah,
I was like, whatever you think it takes at that point with that type of, I'd be like, just double it. Who's it gonna hurt?
who's it going to hurt? They're not going to hurt us. We're going to successfully sink that sucker. So we did it. We absolutely doubled the charges, and it was a lot of C4 under that thing in haversacks. So we swam it in the big day. It was a beautiful day. Everybody's out there on their observation platforms. So we scuba in. I ran the whole trunk line. It was det cord, and we tied it in properly and set our fuse igniters, old school frogman stuff. We pulled them, and we had plenty of time to get out of there. I think we had a half hour. So we get back on the boats, go back to the bigger boats, and there's Lieutenant Green, and there's all the brass. So we're like, yep, here she goes. And he's like, you gonna give us a countdown? I'm like, yeah, we got it. We had it all timed out. And he said, all right, patrol boats, get ready to engage this thing, because we were all a ways off. And as this thing sank, it was a big ship. As it sank, they were just going to scream in as fast as they could and get as many bullets in that thing as they could. Well, it goes off. Kaplowy. I mean, huge. And the boat starts screaming in. And we're waiting for the 50 cals to start going off. All you can see is this plume of just steam and water. And they're going, and then they come down to a slow, they slow way down, and it's like there's nothing. It sank so fast, it broke it in half. And the reason why we know this is because we still had scuba tanks, and I'm like, let's go check it out. Let's go dive and look and see what happened. And so Lieutenant's like, okay, cool, you got plenty of air, go for it. And that was really cool, because there were still bubbles coming out. So we just followed the bubbles down. And we got to see this thing just split in half down on the bottom. I mean, it literally just went and sank. And the boat unit guys come over, and they're like, what the hell? We didn't get to hit. We didn't even see the thing. And Colin looks at me, and I'm like, sir, you wanted it sunk. That was our job. And we all just started busting up laughing, because, hey, do what you got to do. And honestly, I never knew. And this is the first time I actually sank a floating ship, literally sank one. And so I didn't know how fast they'd go down or not, but that was another funny one. Then after that, the last thing is we went to Malaysia for Operation Full Eagle, which is a big high-level joint military exercise to support South Korea. Jumped out with double ducks into Malaysia. It was fun.
What is a double duck? Is that like a inflatable
Yeah.
boat?
Yeah, it's two Zodiacs stacked on top of each other with two huge G12 cargo chutes. And yeah, you roll them both out together as one. Usually you roll them out a single duck is just one boat, and sometimes you have two go out. For whatever reason, we had to do two stacked on top of each other. I think it was a load issue thing, and jumped out, and we did some training with both the South Koreans and the Malaysian special forces. So that was fun. That is a crazy jungle too. That is the most gnarly, dangerous jungle I've ever spent 2 weeks in my life. I mean, there's cobras, there's tigers. It's like, what? I mean, I slept I slept at night with an M14 and a 45 like this, with surrounded by mosquito net in a hammock between two palm trees. Like, I'm like, this place is nuts. The sounds you'd hear at night are like monkeys howling and barking, and gosh, it was wild. So anyway, that's kind of how that platoon ended, and it was a great platoon. I mean, we had a lot of fun and a lot of good memories, and we did do some training and readiness, so it wasn't all cleanup. But
Well, it's good to do something different as well and help out and to help clean up, do your part, save some lives. I mean, come on,
yeah,
that's good as well. I just, I wanted to call out one thing that I'm sure will be called out by other folks is how we kind of laughed at the buffoons
oh
who
yeah,
put three satchel charges to that truck. And then when we came back to talking about your experience, and
yeah,
our initial reaction is like, yeah, double it. So
yeah,
we're going through the exact same thought process that those guys went through to put
yeah, yeah.
which proves my point about how we're a little cavalier with explosives, right?
We You're darn right, and I'm guilty as charged. I did know one thing: we were a long way away from that thing, and we had the advantage that there was so much weight above that charge
Mm-hmm.
that there's probably not going to be much debris. I mean, within maybe a half a mile, but we were well over a couple miles away. But
Oh, yeah.
because you have this tamping effect. But yeah, I've been there and done silly stuff before that I ought not have done.
Well, we'll get into more stories just like that in future episodes. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you all next time.